This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions. Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Invest Like a Pro. I'm going to give you a stock market update today. I'm going to go through the market conditions. We're trying to see if this market wants to pull back here. And one thing I'll tell you is there is one change this week in the market conditions that might have an impact on it's something we're going to have to watch really closely as we move into next week. So let's go ahead and get into this. Before I do that, let's just take a quick minute and talk about, if you have an interest in learning more about this approach, my approach to the market, looking at trend and momentum in multiple time frames, I suggest starting with the book. It's I'm offering at a discount right now. If you go to rabilstockresearch.com/book, you can find out more information on that. Let's go ahead and get going. I'm going to start out with the market conditions, and I'm showing how we've got. So I get this question. I don't know why. I mention it every week. I use the Investors Intelligence Sentiment Number. Okay, it's a survey. They read a bunch of guys' markets opinions, and they come up with whether they're bullish, bearish, or thinking correction. All right. And so this is what this sentiment number is that I use. I've been using it for 30 plus years. It's worked. It works very well for me. And one thing I'll say is that we have dropped this week from 40% more bulls than bears down to 37%. All right. So we're at 37%, but anything between 35% and 45% is in the range where, you know, we're at higher risk of a pullback. Some type of correct. We're getting a little bit too bullish, basically. Now, it is starting to drop off a little bit, but what I'll say is that we're still in that range where I'd put it in the negative camp. All right. We got a little bit of a rally in the RSI 5. It was starting to drop, and I moved it to neutral, but now it's rallied back up. And in fact, price is right about at a new high in this move. And this is making a considerably lower high after getting above the 70 mark. So something we got to watch here, but it goes back into the negative camp as well. So we've got these two on the negative side right now. And what that tells us is we need to be on the lookout for a pullback. And that's not a big surprise. We've been kind of talking about that, especially based on the way how far away we are from the 18-week. Now, I'm going to get into the trend and momentum in more detail in all the time frames, but I want to spend a minute here. And just so you know, before I close this down, everything is basically the same. The only thing that's changed here is the volatility on the daily. So I'm going to go into that right now. This has switched from positive to neutral. And let me just show you what's going on here. So if we look at this daily chart, and I want to zero in on this, we've been declining below the ATR has been down below a declining 18 MA of the average true range, and now we're above that line. Now this line is still falling, and we're going to need this line to turn up to kind of confirm that it turned. And then if that happens, it'll turn negative. But this just the fact that we're kind of sneaking up here in the way this is developing, it's kind of looking like the volatility is increasing as we're going up into a new high here. So maybe this tries to eke out a new high or something like that. If the volatility continues to increase, that's going to increase the risk of a better pullback that could cause some, maybe deeper correction or something like that. Now, if we go and look at the bigger picture, and this is why you got to be very careful about being too bearish, all right? Even if this turns up, we're making a new low on the weekly. This is still the momentum, the volatility on the weekly is still very, very low. That's bullish. That's very bullish. So even though there's this opening here, we've got this air pocket to pull back. You got to look at the trend and the momentum, and then you look at the volatility, and you have to have at least for me, I can't do anything but have a positive bias about this right now. If we start to get bigger bars on the weekly chart, then that could change things. Right now, I'm a little bit worried about a pullback showing up. But when you look at the individual stocks, for the most part, it makes sense. They should at least take a breather. Even if we don't pull back, you would think a lot of stocks are going to kind of maybe channel sideways or something like that just to work off the overbought condition. All right. So right now, the conditions overall is we've got some sentiment that's a little too high. We're up into overbought land, potentially setting up a divergence here, which is something we're going to have to watch over the next week. And we're showing for the first time really in a while. We did poke up here before, but to me, this is a little different. I thought the momentum to the downside was a little stronger. Now we made a marginal new low and quickly reversed. So if you think about it, I mean, I'm looking at the ATR like I would a price chart. To me, this isn't a lot of follow through, and it's starting to look like it wants to reverse a little bit. We're back into this kind of zone in the past where when the volatility got down here, we started to look for some kind of a reversal. So these are little things we want to just kind of keep in the back of our mind. We don't predict or anything right now. It's neutral. If this turns up, if we get the moving average to turn up, then we know that this time frame has a lot more risk to it. And that would make sense because we get some kind of a little check back a little closer to trend support, which is somewhere in the 45 to 4,600 range when you look at the 18 week and where it broke out from. All right, let's start going through these individual time frames. I still think the monthly chart is in pretty good shape. We're operating off of a pinch play. And what I've been saying, I wasn't really sure because this was such a big bar. Normally I'm expecting a 2 to 4 bar move out of a pinch play when you don't have a lot of strength in the momentum, right? So this is not really a trend play because we don't have the momentum in our favor like this, right? We're just kind of coming out of this basing area. So I'd be more inclined to look at this more like a short-term trading play. But maybe what this wants to do is break out and then, and then maybe make some kind of a reversal off this level. So just something we're going to have to keep an eye out for. But right now on this time frame, the bias is up. It's not a powerful trend, but it's good enough. All right. Now let's look at the weekly because I think the weekly is in a pretty good shape. After this strong move to the upside, we got really good action out of green DI. Now, I want to make sure I clarify something. So what I say here is we do a reset. I don't really want to look for divergence in the DI and the MACD. I don't want to go back here and compare this to this after we've gone through this reset where we came back down to the zero line and this kind of got down and got low, right? So green DI, got down low, right? It came down, and now we're moving back up. So if I compare green DI, it's actually doing a pretty good job of maintaining the move. It's making new highs. So we want to look for green DI to diverge which it's starting to do now. If you look at this weekly, we're making a new high after pulling back, and this is not confirming. You see that? Now, if we push up, the week isn't out yet, so we get one more day here. If we push up and finish at a new high, and this is still down here, then we know that any kind of reversal from here is going to be a divergence, a DI divergence, and likely a red DI divergence as well, and start forming some kind of a contraction on the weekly chart. All right. And if that's the case, then we could start to look for some kind of a deeper pullback again into this bigger support area, which on the spider is around 450 to 450, really up to, it could be as high as 454. But I think, 450 and a half, 451 is probably a little bit more likely if it decides to pull back. But here's the point I want to make. Even though we're resetting on MACD and the DI, it is not a reset on the ADX line itself. This is potentially divergence. We are making a dramatic new high in price, and this is way down here. Now, it's right above the 25 mark, but it's still basically connected here. If this can't climb much more and we start to turn down, then this would be a bearish divergence pattern on the ADX that would be pretty concerning, that I'd almost be looking for something maybe a little bit more meaningful to the downside. Now, the fact that we're already climbing above the 25 line here suggests to me that this will probably climb high enough to where we don't really have that problem. As long as we clear the 25 mark to a decent degree, you get up to 27, 28, something like that, then I'm not necessarily looking for that really bearish type of reversal pattern, which I've done a number of videos on. Right now we're on the watch for this. But mainly what we're looking for is this DI divergence to suggest some kind of a pullback. When I go through all this, I'm a bottom up technician. I look at thousands and thousands of charts, and I'm telling you, there's a lot of improvement in a broadening taking place in a lot of areas that didn't do anything last year. We've got nice improvement in some financials and some healthcare. And I think even basic materials, which hasn't really kicked in on a relative basis yet, there's a lot of individual stocks in the sector that are starting to look more attractive. So I personally think the odds are this is going to be okay, and we're just going to get a pullback or a pause here. Hopefully that's the way this is going to play out. And if it plays out that way, there should be a lot of opportunities. All right, now that's the weekly. Let's just look at the daily chart, because this is where it gets a little bit confusing. If you know my strategies, there's some cross currents taking place here. First of all, we've got a reverse divergence pattern that has developed. All right, one of the guys that I have worked with and coached one-on-one actually put a comment in one of the videos, I think from Tuesday, talking about this on both the QQQ and the Spider. We're making a higher low here and a lower low here, and it's a good spot. It's a good thing to see. All right, now here's the issue that I've got with this. We're actually moving up here, and this is sort of straddling the 18, and these are going in the opposite direction. So it's a counter parallel lines trade as well. And if I look at this, I mean, we definitely broke the 18. I mean, if I'm drawing in a trend line, I'm probably drawing it like this. And we broke the trend line. We're forming the 2. Now, that doesn't mean we have to come down and form the 3. It's just we've got this issue here, and we have the break of the 18, the rally back up, and this isn't really following through right now. So it just seems more likely that we have to come down and maybe consolidate a little bit more. Now, here's where you got to be really careful about getting too bearish. And my reason is that we reached a very high mark on the ADX here, really high. I mean, it's up over 60 before it started to pull back. The other thing that I'll tell you is the ADX has dropped from 60 all the way down to 30, and price is still sitting up here. This is another form of reverse divergence. You see what I mean? We're giving back. This is an overbought, oversold oscillator. It's coming way down to almost the neutral mark, and price is not giving up anything. That's a bullish sign. Now, that doesn't mean we can't pull back again, but I would stay, and I know I'm doing this on the S&P, but you need to do this on individuals. I'm showing you how to do this so that you can do this on individual stocks you're interested in. And I would suggest to you that we want to be on the lookout for stocks that are setting up, and don't worry about whether the market sets up. I think the market's conditions are strong enough, especially when you go and you look at my spreadsheet, almost everything's on the left side. If we get a setup there, especially if the market pulls back a little bit more and we lose a few more bulls, it's going to be totally fine. So don't get too bearish right now. The one thing I wanted to point out here is on the hourly chart, what we've got is we had pretty strong move to the downside confirmed by this, right? And now we've made this move to the upside. This is not all that strong, but we did get green DI to take over. And then if you notice, we had this drop today on Thursday, and red DI couldn't even get above 25, and then green got right back above. So I don't know. I'm sort of thinking that maybe this is more like a channeling pattern rather than some kind of a reversal that takes place. But we got to be on the lookout for this, because I would view this as a trend line break and a test, just like what's going on the daily chart. We could have a 2. This is a 2 of 2. You see what I mean? We got a 2 on the daily chart, and we've got a 2 on the hourly. So we got to stay on our toes right now. This isn't an optimum entry point. Just to make it crystal clear, this isn't a time where I would say, wow, just buy everything in sight. But I will say this: if this comes down and forms the ABC that I'm talking about, this gets a little bit closer. This drops down to 25, and we get this to a little bit closer to the 18-week, and maybe even form a little bit better pinch play I mean, I would say it would be a time when you really want to start putting some trades on. All right. So, something we want to be on the lookout for. Don't get too fanatical about getting the perfect entry on the individual stock basis. If you get a good setup on an individual stock basis, I think I'd be okay with doing it. I mean, optimally, I'd probably want to at least see this come back and test this prior low. But overall, I think the conditions are really solid. Have a great long weekend, and we'll see you next week.